Made it.
You made it. Okay, great. So I don't know if I am counting right. Oh, I lost myself, but I think we've got 6 out of 7 committee members here tonight. So we do have a quorum. We can conduct our business. So agenda item number 2, proof of notification. So I know that Clerk Kalish on Friday afternoon posted the agenda on the courthouse bulletin board, so it was properly notified. Agenda approval. I'm looking for a motion to approve a 14-point agenda before us this evening.
This is Bob. Also move.
Dave will second.
Okay, motion by Bob, second by Turk. All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
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 Those say no. Okay, that motion carries. We've got an agenda. Agenda item number 4, public comments. Topics raised and comments received from the public may be placed on a future agenda for consideration. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to the committee? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move forward to agenda item number 5, which I think we're actually going to skip because I didn't see the minutes placed in our folder or on the committee website, so we can approve the minutes from the October 10th meeting at the next meeting. I believe, unless someone wants to step in and correct me. Okay, then we'll go to agenda item number 6, emails from the public. Let's see. So also just make sure, just a friendly reminder to folks, make sure you're muted when you're not speaking, just so we don't get a lot of feedback noise. And I know Ms. Scott from Colorado, she was kind enough to do this for us this evening. I'm assuming she's on vacation. I'm sure she can probably try to help too. If you can, just make sure to mute your cell phone if you're on your cell phone.
We want to hear the hockey game.
Okay, so emails from the public. So I did get 2 emails since our last meeting from the public about the referendum. So one came from Greg Detman, and you can see that in the document that says 06 emails on our folders. And then it's on our screen right now. And then the second email came on, that starts on page 2. It came from Aaron Detman. So I think I would summarize these as one was anti-referendum and one was pro-referendum. So I just wanted to make sure everyone got a chance to see these. Does anyone have any comments or questions about these? Anything to add? Okay, we'll just move on, but I just wanted to make sure that their comments were shared with the committee. So if you haven't read those, you can read those at your leisure. Agenda item number 7, public education information report. So I've got 6 sub items here: state shared revenues, highway department, UW Richland, debt, Pine Valley census comparison, and updated budget cuts. So on Friday, I rewatched that portion of our last referendum committee meeting, and I took the ideas from the committee and I made amendments for each one of these ideas that came from the committee. So I'll just walk through each one of these. The first one's on shared revenue, and the idea here was to show what the cumulative cost of the shared revenues that we've lost from the state of Wisconsin since 2001, if you account for inflation. So if you're following along in your documents, this would be 07A public education, and it is on page 12, and there's a new chart and it has a lot of blue bars on it. It's a bar chart. There we go. The introductory sentence says the annual loss of shared revenues from the state are illustrated in the following chart. When all the amounts are added together, the losses since 2001 total $9.8 million. So there's that one. The second piece of information is the highway department. This is just an update. I've got a meeting scheduled next week. If anyone wants to attend that meeting with me, please let me know. I'll be happy to have anyone else there. I'm going to meet with the clerk and the county clerk and the highway commissioner just to see if we can zero in on what the cost of asphalt is and what that portion of the asphalt is going to the levee. So that I just show the information I've gotten so far in the chart, and that's on the bottom of page 15. So hopefully I'll have more information on our next committee meeting about that. Then starting on page 16, quite a bit of new information about the UW Richland campus. I filed an open records request last summer. I got some information in October from the chief communications officer at UW Platteville. So the chart right there that's shown on the screen, it's now gone from the document. There's a red line through it. I mean, you can still see it, but I intend it to be gone. The chart right below it, this now shows what the budget for the campus is from the UW system. So you can see what's happened with the budget since 2012, between now and 2023. It's dropped from 3 million down to less than 1.5 million. And then maybe this isn't all ordered right, but if you go to the next page, there's some notes from their communications officer. They just requested that all this be, added in whenever we share it with folks. So that's their interpretation. If you keep scrolling to the next page, skipping over the faculty information, which we already had, at the bottom of the next page, this shows what the budget would be if it had been adjusted for inflation. So we'd be seeing a $4 million budget for the campus instead of 1.4 million if it had been adjusted for inflation. So that's UW Richland. So next on the list, 7D is debts, and this is on page 19. So what I did here is I showed what the annual debt payments are that the county makes since 2014 and then projecting it out toward 2036. So the two things that kept coming up, one was people wanted to know about, well, what about the radio tower project? When that gets added, what debt's that going to add? And then the other thing is the annual short-term borrowing that we've been doing. So in the current year, I don't think I have that dollar amount noted, but it's about 3.5 million or just a little over. But then next year, the amount is 3.8 million. That's not a final amount because we haven't actually done the borrowing for the radio tower project. It's just based on a projection that Carol Worth gave us back in May. So this is what we're currently projecting to go on to the debt levy each year. Okay, next topic is Pine Valley. So Supervisor Caro, you had mentioned being interested in some census data on, how many beds are filled at the nursing home. So here, if you go to page 24, I did a little research on Friday. We've got 4 counties with data. Lafayette County was mentioned, but we haven't been able to track down. I called the county board chair down in Lafayette County and I didn't hear back from him. So what I did is I looked up from the Wisconsin Department of Health Services licensed beds in each one of those counties. And then I did some sort of a formula. I can't remember how I did it between employees and licensed beds to show how many employees there are per licensed bed. And then showed the average daily census for December of 2021. We got that number from Iowa County, so I thought I'd show it for the others. Sauk County, I got that email. It's not in here, but I think it was 54 last December. So it looks to me like we might be a little understaffed. We're certainly not overstaffed. It doesn't look to me like it compared to these other counties, especially with their average daily census. And then the last thing is an updated budget cuts, and that is on page 29. So on 28, I've stricken through that old chart, and on 29, we had some discrepancies between the budget cuts we were tracking and the resolutions and what's in the 5-year financial plan. So I looked at the financial plan that Mr. Langreich presented to the finance committee last time, and I got all these figures matched up, and everything looks good to me. So we got updated figures that we'll use later in the meeting. So does anyone have any thoughts or questions? You can wish for more information. I don't know if I'm going to be able to add much more, but
Mr. Chair, I've got a question.
yes.
Yeah, back at the borrowing, we look at the borrowing as part of the tax levy. That was page 19.
Okay, page 19.
I'm trying to understand the increase between now and when the tower project starts being part of that. I would have thought it would have changed it more than that. It looks like it's only gone up around 200,000.
Yeah, the reason for that is because Carol Worth structured it such that as our debt was paid off for other notes, we would fill it in with this one. So we're only paying on interest in the coming years, my understanding, and actually for a few years, I believe, if I remember right. Principal payments don't start till later, and so as the other notes start to get paid off, this chart, if we would have looked at it before the radio tower project, would have dropped off. But now it's basically holding steady because of that radio tower project.
Okay, so if one was to overlay all the different debt service payments, you would see some of them declining, but then being filled in with the tower payments.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you want any of that information, I've got a spreadsheet with all the notes where I've been keeping track of all this.
No, that's okay.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions?
My question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. C.
So I understand there's no net increase in debt payment with the introduction of the $8 million.
No, there is a net increase of about 200 grand a year. I think, I'm not sure if you remember at the time, but there was an estimate given to us on the effect on a $100,000 home. And it was a fairly low amount. And you can see it on the chart here. We're going up from 3.6 million to 3.8 million when that radio tower debt hits us. But it's not a lot. More of the impact is going to be felt out in the late 2020s and the 2030s.
All right. It shows the service as a kind of a straight line.
Yeah, that line would have dropped had we not borrowed for the radio tower project. So it will not add over the current spending levels very much. It's a fairly minor amount, and in future years it would actually be the same as it is for 2022 because it drops between 2028 and 2029. It's very small amounts we're talking about.
So there was just a slight bump in the line.
That's right. Yeah.
Unnoticeable.
Almost. That's right. Okay, anyone else? Okay, if not, oh, go ahead. Someone was going to say something.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to tell you how much I appreciate these charts. I use my large magnifier and I'm able to follow along very well with my big magnifier at home. And I really appreciate this layout.
Good. Good. Glad. It's good to hear. Okay, so I'm just looking for a motion to adopt an updated public education information report that we can use for communicating with the public and other committees.
Steve Carroll moves that we adopt it.
Bob will second.
Okay, motion by Carol, second by Frank. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. So let's move to agenda item number 8, correspondence from committees. So this was my activity yesterday. I went through these and I really appreciate Steve Carroll. He also went through these last week, and a lot of work has been done by a lot of committees. It's really helpful to see what different committees are, what they're thinking. So what we've done here, and by we I mean Steve and I, is we prepared, similar to what we did our October 10th meeting, a list of questions or requests for more information. So each one of the committees has a document and it's attached. It's either in your folders or on the website. There's quite a few of them. We've got every standing committee of the county, plus Simon's Natatorium Board, Richland Economic Development Board, and we've also got the original county board resolutions from August attached. That's attachment 08C. So I think I'll just take this in order as how it's in the cover sheet. It's only a little disjointed because the red board just met this morning, and I didn't have that yesterday when I prepared this. So when I got that this afternoon, I edited it and I put Red's response at the very end of the document. So we'll just go through them one by one, I think, and we'll just see what folks think about this. So Public Works, Pine Valley, and Red, we'd already requested information. They responded to us, and that's why I started with Public Works. I was just starting with the responses. So Public Works, they do have a response for us. The suggested responses that I have for you all to consider tonight, and you might want to change these or add to these, they're in red. And the original requests that we made are in black. And then if you want to see their response, you just go to document 08A, Public Works, in our folders. So this is a very long document, and I don't think we have time to read each one of these, but I'll just pause and let folks either browse through them or start asking questions or sharing their own thoughts. We'll just go through these one by one, if that sounds like an okay plan.
So you're talking about our going through these bullet points?
No, each section. I don't want to read each bullet point because we'll be here all night. So if whoever is controlling the screen can put that Public Works Standing Committee section, there's 4 bullets back up on the screen, that'd be great, just in case people don't have the document open.
I have a general question.
Sure.
In a few instances, the committee or the department has said they do not want certain costs to be on the referendum, and so I'm not sure I understand what that would do. That they still have to make the cut, right? I mean, if they're not on the referendum, then that budget deficit still has to be dealt with. So where does that leave us?
Well, I've addressed that. I was thinking the same thing, Steve. I've addressed that under agenda item number 12, county board survey.
Okay, all right, we'll get to it then.
Okay, any thoughts or questions about these responses? Okay, let's move on to Public Works. Sorry, let's move on from Public Works to Pine Valley then. So I think the big highlight here is that they are projecting profits in the years 23 to 2027, and you can see that at the top of page 3 of the document. I'm sorry, page 2 of the document. So I think we're mostly done with Pine Valley. We need just a little more information. That's my opinion, at least. Any thoughts or questions on those from the committee? Okay, let's go
Mr.
ahead
Chair, I
and
guess I do have a question.
Yep, go ahead, Mr. Carroll.
I guess this is the place to ask it. In their initial response, they mentioned that projected revenues would be lower by, they're projecting 7%. And I wanted to make sure I understood, is it just because of difficulty with staffing, or was there anything else that made them project that 7% reduction in revenues from occupancy?
Supervisor,
I'm not sure, but yeah, go ahead, Mr. Rizzo. Yep.
Supervisor Carroll, it's mainly tied to staffing issues.
So if staffing, if we wave the magic wand and staffing was not the problem, you would be able to have occupancy that would bring the revenues you're looking for.
Things would look a lot different if we had adequate staffing all the time, correct?
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anyone else on Pine Valley? And generally what I'm thinking is I think at the end of this agenda item, we'll take a roll call vote and we'll basically forward all these on to the various committees and boards if you all agree. So if you don't agree with any of these, please speak up. Otherwise, we'll just keep going because I don't want to waste people's time. Especially if you've already read through them or you don't have any questions about them. So going to the next one, that would be the Public Safety Standing Committee. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bullet points. And this would be attachment D in your folders.
So this is Bob. So this went to the Public Safety Committee for review. I don't know that we've met since this came out. I don't remember when this came out.
No, these did not. So now we've switched from ones where we've heard responses to ones where this is the first time we're seeing the report. Now, you, of course, have seen the report because you're on the Public Safety Committee, but this is the first time this committee has considered their report, which is attachment D.
Okay, all right, thank you.
What's the reasoning behind asking these questions?
Well, let's see. In general, I would say the reasoning is so that we can clearly craft a referendum question for the finance committee. If we don't, I think it's intended to get us more information so that we feel a pretty high level of confidence about what's both being cut permanently and what they're asking to have put on the referendum and what they feel about items being placed on the referendum or not. So an example would be the second bullet point here. I know that the clerk of circuit court and the DA's office are projecting that they can increase revenues over the next 5 years that will cover proportional cuts to their departments. I'm asking the question here of can they produce more than they stated, because the sheriff's department is not able to produce revenues of any significance compared to their staffing levels. The amount of staffing cuts that the sheriff's department would have to make is it's very damaging to that department. So I just want to make sure that if, in this case, the clerk of circuit court and the DA's office can produce more revenues, that they're telling us that so that we can help cover some of those staffing cuts in the sheriff's department.
So do you want us to address any of that right at the moment? This is District Attorney Jennifer Harper. Do you want us to address any of that right now, or just we'll send it back to the committee and I can talk to Melissa and the rest of the committee?
I think the latter method is preferable, DA Harper, unless a committee member wants a department head to address something on here, because maybe they don't want a question going forward. So if you could hang on just in case we've got questions from the committee, that would be great.
So this is Bob from the Public Safety Committee. DA Harper, I think it would be prudent for us to sit down with these questions at the committee. Now that we know what they are ahead of time, that's going to be good. And to address them, I think they're all easily addressed. But I'd also like to make sure we have all the comment and input we should.
Sure, absolutely. They were just easy to address, so I didn't know if we wanted that now, but I can certainly talk later.
Thank you. I'm sure you can.
Yeah, we don't want to get too bogged down, and trying to answer every question tonight, because we'll all want to go to bed eventually. So, any other thoughts on the Public Safety Standing Committee questions? Supervisor Severson, are you, what are your thoughts on my response to your question?
I don't know.
Well, certainly share them. We don't want to move these questions forward if the committee doesn't want to. Okay, well, let's move on to the HHS and Veterans Standing Committee then. This one, between Steve and I, we had quite a few questions on this one. I think they put together a very good chart, just like the Public Safety Committee put together. I think this HHS, especially the HHS department, there's just a lot going on in this chart, a lot of ideas. There was a lot to sort through. I think this took me over an hour to get through it myself. If I could just highlight one thing, the fourth bullet point from the bottom, most counties our size have HHS staffing levels of 40 to 50. So I was curious to know what their staffing levels would be under these proposed cuts. And then I think Supervisor Caro had a question about a little more information on this idea that we could borrow to comply with court-ordered child and adult placements. So I think those are probably the most impactful questions out of all of these. Another reason I think it's important to ask these questions now is because I think about half of these items were requested to go on the referendum. And if we don't understand what these items are, I think it's going to be very challenging to explain it to the public. So I think we have to understand what is being asked of this committee and the county board. So any thoughts or questions on those? Okay, let's move to land and zoning then. It looked to me in general like the land and zoning committee was able to come up with the budget reduction of 60 grand plus some. And I think the spirit of the questions that I wrote here were, and Steve, I know had the third from the last bullet point. Can you give us some more detail on, what you could actually bring in? Because that could help offset costs and other offset reductions in other departments and committees as well. If we can get additional monies, they're kind of making it sound like they've got more money they can give us, but they're not specifying. Okay, I'll keep going to fair recycling.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
Could
Go
I
ahead,
ask
Mr.
one question about the land and zoning details?
Of course.
I noticed in the documents that there was a proposal to raise the fees for septic inspections from $25, I think, a month to $25 to $50. I felt that that is going to be very distasteful to the people in the county. Everyone in the county, except for the cities and villages, has a septic system, and the state of Wisconsin has encouraged, along with the Environmental Protection Agency, has encouraged the upgrading of septic systems.
Yes. Mr. Seep, I don't know if you're done talking, but there's a bullet point here. It says, how do private septic inspection fees in Richland County compare to other similar counties? We are interested in the logic behind the increase.
Yes, I'm very much opposed to that increase because on the one hand, we're saying we're trying to.
Can folks hear me? I'm not seeing
Yeah, I
any
can hear you
videos
fine.
anymore.
I can hear
I
Don
don't know if
fine
I'm
too.
offline.
Yeah,
On
we
the
can
one,
hear
I
you.
hear you both.
one hand, we're trying to cut expenses, and on the other hand, we're trying to raise revenue at the expense of the taxpayers, which in the form of additional fees is just another tax. I think that's pretty punitive. Whole idea of improving septic systems is to provide for improvement in our groundwater and well water systems safety.
Sean, are you there?
Sean, can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
Yeah,
I
I can hear you, Sean. We just don't hear Sean.
Sean is the one they can't hear, Dan.
It looks,
I would assume Sean's probably having some technical difficulties.
Yeah.
yeah, give him a minute. Just send him an email quick.
Folks, can you hear me again?
Yeah,
Yes.
we got you now.
Okay, sorry, my internet dropped. I'm back though. Did anyone answer Mr. Seep's question?
Yeah, he spoke about it, and it's I think your comments here. It's in the question. It's a question that we need to get a response to from land and zoning.
Okay. Okay, anyone else on land and zoning then? Or am I interrupting a conversation that was started while I was gone?
Nope, not at all.
Okay. All right, then we'll just keep moving on. The next section would be fair recycling and parks.
Wait, Mr. Chair, could we go back one?
Of course. Yep, to land and zoning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Down 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth bullet point
Okay.
says, what are other options for increasing revenues? Registered Deeds Office, in case the state does not approve additional funding for property transfers. Like, I don't think that there really is any increase in revenues that can be had there. I don't know how there could be any increase in anything in that office. Besides her charging a crazy amount for a copy of a piece of paper. Or her charging her time that she's already paid for by taxpayers to go look up a deed or a mortgage or whatever it is. I just don't see how she could do that.
Mr. Chair, I think this is referring to the fact that right now the state gets 80% of the transfer fee and the county gets 20%, and there's a possibility of going 50-50. And that's the increase that we currently are hearing might happen. But the question is, if that doesn't happen, then what else can we do?
And Supervisor Severson, yeah, that was Supervisor Caro's question. He wrote that, but I guess what was going through my mind was, are there other online options that could be explored for increasing revenues? So, I was thinking a lot of times people are doing ancestry research on their families in Richland County, but they might live, in Missouri or Michigan now, and they, are we up to the current technological capabilities of allowing that stuff to happen, so that we're bringing in revenue from people outside of Richland County that might want information from that office?
Well, we don't have
It's
the
just
money
one idea I
to get
had,
that
but I
stuff
have
in
no
there.
idea. I have no idea. That's why I thought Steve's question was a good one there. At least ask the question, and maybe the answer is no, there aren't.
That actually is being addressed currently. Sue had just brought that to the committee in the
Okay,
last
anything
month.
else on land and zoning here?
Yeah, Barb was just talking about something, Sean.
Am I gone again? Am I here still?
We hear you, John.
I guess you guys probably can't hear me, but Sean's question, the answer to Sean's question is yes. Sue is addressing that currently with a change in vendors.
All right, thank you. Did everybody hear
We heard you,
Barb's
Barb.
comment?
We heard you.
Okay, Sean, are you back?
This is
I would guess
Kathy
not.
Cooper.
All right, Kathy.
I just want to say that I don't know if you see the chat, but I'm putting together our next agenda, which is for the Monday, the 28th. So I'll make sure that this is on the agenda.
Folks, I just wanted to let you know, I just joined on my phone. So if
Okay.
my internet keeps dropping, I can stay here.
All right, thank you, Sean. Barb made a
Sorry
comment
about
that, can you hear us now, Sean?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I don't know if you heard, Barb had made a comment that the Register of Deeds office is working on changing a vendor. Is that correct, Barb? And that's going to may make a change. And then I think the other comment was Kathy from mentioned that she's going to be bringing these questions onto her committee. So that's all that you missed so far.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, anything else on land and on land and zoning? Okay, we'll go on to fair recycling and parks then. I think me personally, you know, the thinking, well, Steve wrote the first two bullets, I wrote the last one, but I agree with Steve's recommendations here as far as more information. I thought the vision sounded great. I'm just wondering about numbers behind it. So I think that's the spirit of what's being said here. And actually the Fair Recycling and Parks Committee provided this before the deadline. We gave them a deadline of November 30th so they could have a little more time because the fair is so demanding in August and September. So I think they're ahead of schedule, and I think it's just there's some interest in some more information there. Any thoughts on this one? Okay, we'll keep moving on to the Education Standing Committee. So this is the one committee that I am on, besides Finance and Personnel, that that is one of these committees responding to the referendum committee. So Steve Carroll wrote the first bullet point. I wrote the other bullet points here. I'm aware of some of this, of what's going on in that committee, and I think the spirit of some of my questions that I wrote here, requests for information, or to get more clear about what the committee is going to be doing here. I think there's going to be some issues with tidying things up well enough by the time we need to develop a referendum question if we just don't get some of these questions answered sooner rather than later. So any thoughts on these?
Mr. Chair, Steve here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I agree. They came back with an interesting proposal or organizational idea, but like you say, if we could flesh out some numbers, that'll help a lot.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Next up is Simon's Natatorium Board. So Steve had the first two bullets here. I had the last one. I think Steve, Supervisor Carroll, you know, had some more information he wanted about this potential YMCA relationship with Simon's. And then I was thinking with the third bullet point, if a nonprofit option is not preferred, how can you generate additional revenues to offset that 37 grand per year? So I just listed out a few ideas there. So any thoughts on this one? Okay, next one is Finance and Personnel.
Mr. Chair.
Chair Brewer, oh, go ahead. Who's that?
Yes, this is Chair Brewer, and I'd like to get back to Simon's. And the real expense for Simon's is not the 37,000 per year; it's the cost of maintaining the building and the facility. That's the real cost to the county. So, okay, it seems like a measly amount, 37,000 a year, big deal. Well, that is significant, but also the cost of maintaining the facility is the big issue here.
Yeah, very similar with the fairgrounds and with the campus as well.
Well, especially the county owns too many buildings.
Yeah, I think the third bullet point, there's a first sub bullet point about increasing donations. And, you know, I've heard that there are people in the community who want to donate to Simons, and I don't know if there's enough solicitation going on of those people who may be willing to make donations. So I think that's kind of why I was asking it in that way, because I think there might be ways to cover some of these costs from the community rather than just having them go onto the tax levy.
Mr. Chair, it's Carrie.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just have a comment, I guess, and a lot of it comes down to this increasing donations and donations for, let's say, the fair and parks. I think that people who want to donate money are going to donate money, but I think the dollar figure that you're looking for to make up costs of what it is to operate these services that we provide is going to be a huge burden on the people who want to donate money. I just don't think that we have the capacity here in our community to see those dollars like you're wanting to see with those donations. And with every other nonprofit organization and other service organizations that are not affiliated with the county that are always looking for donations too, it's like we're competing with those groups that actually probably need the money more than what we do when we have tax levy dollars. And yeah, it would be nice, but I think getting some donations are good, but trying to increase those donations to offset our cost for those services, I think, is asking too much.
Do you think maybe it should say, so instead of offset, that kind of makes it sound like eliminate. Do you think it should just say, you know, offset or reduce?
I don't know if like we should be looking at increasing donations for every service that we're providing. And I think we should just need to accept them, but I don't think that we need to go out and hammer every community thing in business and say for donations. And they're like, hey, I already pay you taxes and now I got to give you more money to fund this thing. And I just find that hard. I think getting some money from them in donations is good and it's thoughtful and accepting, but relying on that to try to make up the difference is not how we should be looking at this, I don't think.
Well, if the referendum fails, you know, say we put Simons on the referendum and say the referendum fails, there will be no other option probably, I'm assuming. But, you know, I get what you're saying. I think Simons already has a foundation and they do collect donations. You know, we already have the UW Richland Foundation. We've already got I don't know what it's called at the fairgrounds. I know Adam Hady's a part of that. You know, I know there's already a lot of donations coming into these different small departments, you know, but it sounds do you think, so what you're saying, I think, is maybe strike that first sub bullet point of increasing donations.
Maybe. I just don't know. It's kind of hard to try to keep asking people for donations, and then you got increasing membership fees, and so I just don't know what we're trying to achieve here.
It's somewhat of a PR problem. You know, most taxpayers do not see the county as their favorite charity.
Right. That's another good example. Yeah.
Well, certainly, yeah, if anyone wants to, you know, strike any of these, you know, make that a motion. If we don't want to ask the Simons Natatorium Board to look at those things, then now's your chance to.
So this
is
Bob.
To change it.
Yeah, this is Bob. I don't think it should be stricken. I think it's a question for them to look at. You know, it says donations. Is this also something? Is this an ad opportunity to sell time or marketing time at Simons or on their bulletin board or the electronic message board? I don't know if that's feasible. That may not be a maybe it's a donation, then they get time that they can identify their company or their business or something like that. So I think it needs to stay. I think it's a question that they need to address, and it's an option.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep, Mr. Seep.
Yes, I would agree, you know, that organization certainly has its own unique constituency and a lot of enthusiastic followers because of the service that it provides. And I think the question of exploring that constituency for further economic support is a worthwhile question to pursue. On the other hand, you know, we've got so many different needs in the county, and everybody needs money. So it's a particular PR issue for them with a unique sort of mission, in my view.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Seep. Mayor Todd, I wonder if you have any thoughts on this, since the city is a partner in this particular.
Right, I do. I of course I do, and I think we should. I don't disagree with any of the increasing donation, increasing membership fees. I think all of these things should be explored. There's been at least one entity has reached out to me and expressed possible interest in one day owning Simons. This is in the last couple of days. There's a lot. Obviously, I don't. Absent if the referendum does not pass, there's going to have to be a radical change in how this facility operates. I don't think there's any way around that. And I think raising fees, I hear a lot from people in the community. They don't like it that you pay more money to be at Anytime Fitness or you be at Fitness 14, and then we're subsidizing Simons. I hear that a lot. On the other side of that, a lot of emotion around keeping the indoor pool. So I think there's going to be more support, perhaps anyway, more support for things like increased donations and increased fees there from the public than some of you think. And it's because of the pool. It's only because of the pool.
Okay, thanks for sharing your thoughts, Mayor Todd. Anyone else on Simons?
I have one more.
Yeah, go ahead.
So for those like increasing donations, like could maybe explore like endowments or something along that line. Be a little bit better for the natatorium board or the what's that group that they have with that? I'm losing track of the name now.
Oh, the foundation?
Yeah, the foundation. To secure like some type of endowments and stuff like that to we asked that
Do we
question.
know if they have an endowment already? Does anyone know? Maybe we could just add a sub bullet here that just says creating an endowment, something like that.
Couldn't hurt. We're simply asking them to consider some ideas, and adding one more gives them the reminder to look into that as well.
How does this?
Okay, so go ahead.
How does the smart farm relate to that issue?
Well, the Smart Farm is not related to the Simons Foundation. That's owned by the UW Richland Foundation, two different foundations. So I'm thinking, so Supervisor Severson, can we take it as a motion to add a sub-bullet under the third bullet that says creating an endowment? Are you comfortable with that?
Sure, something. I guess if we want to have donations and whatever thing they're doing, we might as well look at that route and see if that might be a more sustainable thing in the future.
Okay, and then Supervisor Carroll, can I take yours as a second since you said you supported that?
Yes, you can.
Okay. Okay, so we got a motion by Severson and a second by Carroll. Any discussion on adding that sub-bullet? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. I did not hear any no's, so if anyone did say no, just speak up. Okay, so that motion carries. Anything else on Simons before we move on? Okay, so Finance and Personnel. So Chair Brewer, when is the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting next? I'm assuming that your committee is going to have recommendations at your next meeting.
We'll try, but I'm looking for my calendar here. Is Clint on the line?
Mr. Chair, we're on for December 6th.
Yeah, December 6th.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So that was the nature of my question there. I don't know that it really needs to go. I think the question just got answered, but I think if we don't get that information soon, it's going to make things a lot more challenging. So hopefully the committee can make a decision on the 6th. And then that takes us to the red board. So these are the, this is the one that we just got this afternoon. I emailed it to everybody, but then Ms. Scott dropped everything in the folder and it's on the website too, so you can see their response. So their document is, their initial document was like 15 pages, and I think they added like 3 pages. And I know I saw Mr. Glassbrenner on here earlier, so I'm sure you can answer any questions if folks have any, but looks like we got information about Greene County that we requested last time. What I'm suggesting here is they reach out to the Vernon Economic Development Association, VEDA, and that's different from the economic development position at the county that they interviewed. So they're 100% private funded is what my understanding is. So there was no research on VEDA. And then there was no answer on the private businesses supporting economic development in other counties. So I know they list out how many businesses in Greene County, but we didn't get the, I think Supervisor Frank, that was your question from last time. And they wouldn't have known who to ask about Vernon County because they were reaching out to the county, not to VEDA. So that's, any thoughts on those responses to their responses? Okay, so does anyone else need to review any of them before we get a motion on the floor to pass these on and then vote on that?
This is Bob. Also move to pass this on.
Okay, motion by Frank.
I'll second that. Steve Carroll seconds that.
Okay, second by Carroll. If there's no discussion on it, let's, Ms. Dahl, if you could do a roll call vote, that'd be great.
Okay. Steve Carroll,
Aye.
Sean Murphy Lopez,
Aye.
Bob Frank,
Aye.
Dave Turk,
Aye.
Gary Severson,
Sure.
Todd Coppernow,
Aye.
6 ayes, no, 0 no's.
Okay, so that motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Dahl. So that takes us to agenda item number 9, report on presentation at the Richland Center School Board. I'll hand that off to Mr. Carroll. Mr. Carroll, can you just give us just a brief update? And you were so kind as to spend one of your evenings at the school board meeting telling them about our referendum efforts.
Yes, I forgot to unmute, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I went through the education document as it stood at that time. I probably spent around 15 or 17 minutes going through it and mostly just describing what the charts were trying to explain. There were no questions though. I know it's a lot to absorb all at once, and they had a full agenda. But anyway, there was a pretty good attendance there, so a lot of people were able to see it.
Great, thanks for doing that. So does anyone have any questions for Mr. Carroll? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to video scripts, agenda item number 10, Mr. Turk, and there's a couple documents that he sent earlier today, and those are in your folders as 10A and 10B.
All right, thank you, Sean. Put together another couple of scripts to give you ideas of what we can be looking at to be able to share. I know we haven't met for a while, so we haven't had much to review. I've had things going on in family life too, so haven't had a chance to create a bunch of them, but I put forth these two new ones. One on the budget overview, which was really tempting to get into way too much detail on in looking at what our intent was with these videos. It's trying to keep them short and make a point, and so I intentionally scaled back some of the level of detail I originally wrote into it to keep it more high level and focus on just a couple of the charts. The other one I prepared is an example of the specific department type ones that we had talked about, creating this one in particular for Pine Valley Community Village, just to show what that could look like. And based on information that we had so far, that one's actually fairly short comparatively. So I would welcome any feedback, comments, questions on these scripts.
Okay, does anyone have any feedback for Mr. Turk?
I got to read them first.
The only other thing I would say is we need to get moving on these. We talked about narrative early on. Narrative is being written. There are lots of articles and comments out there. Not saying that those are in conflict with what our goals are, but in some perspectives, it's not necessarily giving us a chance to help try to steer the conversation, as was one of our initial purposes. We talked about making sure that sufficient information gets out to folks. But kudos to those people who have been talking about it. I know the Observer's run several different articles. But as far as getting the county's perspective out, we need to get moving on these.
I agree. We
Yeah,
need to
Dave,
keep
I
moving
did.
this thing. But
Go ahead,
go,
Mr.
Sean.
Frank. Yeah.
So is that I agree. We need to get this conversation out. Is this something we have to wait for whose blessing to do? We have the script. What does it take? There's no reason we shouldn't be.
If you guys are okay with the scripts, I can go ahead and do a video. I think we had asked Sean before, what our authority was to go ahead and move this information out, and we went back to either finance and personnel or the full board, didn't we?
We went to finance and personnel. Yeah, I did run it past them, and Chair Brewer was fine with it. No one at the finance and personnel committee spoke against it. So no, we have the blessing of that group to go ahead and do this. I read through these myself. I didn't see any issues. I think you're just pulling a lot of text from and charts from what we've already approved. So, we have had a lot of chance to look at these already. People have had a chance to ask questions, and we've added more information. So I think personally you can just go forward.
What I would propose to do is I can create the videos. We could circulate them by email to the committee so everybody has a chance to see them before they get published. And if there was something that jumped out at you as being inappropriate or incorrect, it would give us a chance to correct it before it gets published. Would that be okay, Mr. Chair?
That's fine with me. Anyone else have objections to that way of doing it?
No objection. I think it's a great idea to move it.
Yeah, no objection, but remind me how these will get deployed.
Well, our intent was to distribute them through social media platforms. I think we started our conversation was that we were going to start with the Sheriff's Department Facebook page as the one that had the widest audience, and perhaps spread from there. Although I know Mayor Coppernall expressed some thoughts around those areas too. And Todd, maybe you can refresh us a little bit from your perspective.
It should be shared from multiple spots, even within Facebook. Obviously, the point is simply to get reach. So among the county pages, the consensus was that the Sheriff's Department page had the most reach. That's why you launch from there. Because if you share, then all of us, literally everybody who can hear me, should be sharing that from that page. to attract people to it. But I also think, Dave, I don't know, I have no idea how many friends you have on Facebook, how often you use it, those kinds of things. But I also think it's not the worst idea to post it on your own timeline, coming from you, that can be seen by your friends and encourage them to share it as well. When I do videos for the city, a lot of city departments have their own, like Parks and Rec has a page and so on. There isn't an official city page. So when I do a video, I just share it from my own timeline, and from there, I share it into various groups, you know, the Richland County Information Exchange, Richland County Connect, all the, I don't even know how many there are by now. But that's what I do. And when I did the one announcing Dunkin' Donuts was coming, it got 14,000 views that way. So the point is, get it on the sheriff's page. Everybody share it from there. It doesn't do any good just sitting on the page. That's a nice start, but we need to get it out. And just put it in as many places as you can. If there's a usable YouTube channel, it should be on there too. I mean, whoever's got whatever you've got, and then just get it shared, Dave. I mean, get them made as soon as you can, because you're right, the sand's running through the glass. But then the real key, Dave, when you get these things posted, or whoever does the posting, everybody involved in this needs to get, I don't know, a text or an email to make sure we know it's there to get it shared, because the longer it sits stagnant, I mean, Facebook's paying attention to that. The algorithms are picking up what's hot and what's not, and if nobody's paying attention, it loses impact. If it's getting shared, commented, talked about, all of that, they pick that up too, and they send it out a little bit more. So whoever can be in charge of that, we all need to be notified as soon as, I guess, Dave, are you the one that's going to put this stuff? Who can put the videos on the Sheriff's Department page?
MIS has that functionality, and we're happy to do that. And generally, and we can also put it on the county's YouTube channel. So we can put that out and also send an email to this group when it's going out, or we can schedule it to go out upon an agreed time. It's whatever you guys want.
Yeah, exactly. And I just don't know when Dave's going to be ready. You know, when you'll have them done. Dave, do you know that yet?
Not yet, no.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay.
I would say, Mayor Todd, we and Supervisor Turk, we're going to be meeting a lot more. We're going to need to meet more regularly, assuming the committee can. I hope everyone can, because we've got quite a bit of work to do here, and we'll get to this in agenda item number 12, and then when we adjourn. But I see our meetings increasing quite a bit in frequency now that we've got all the reports in hand. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Yep, Mr. C.
Yes, Mayor Todd's suggestion, I think, is very, very pertinent, and certainly a pregnant idea that can really blossom in terms of getting the word out. So, good suggestion.
Mr. Chair, in addition to the social media, perhaps MIS could also make them available on the committee's webpage. Is that feasible, Barb?
Yeah, that won't be a problem at all.
Okay. Well, you know.
Hey, Sean.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, Sean.
Todd, go ahead.
Okay. I don't know, like, for example, every committee or group that has its own page on using Facebook as the example. But for example, this is pertinent to so many different things. The fairgrounds should be sharing this. Simon should be sharing this, right? I mean, the parks, whoever might be affected by a referendum that has a following should be sharing this, because it has a chance to to help every one of you, right? I mean, if this referendum passes, it cures a lot of ills, at least for a while. And if you're talking about fair and veterans and everything on the list, any single one of those topics where there is a group page or a group or a page, they should be sharing this too, because obviously, so if I follow and pay attention to what's going on the fairgrounds page, it's because I care about the fairgrounds. Well, the fairgrounds is part of this. I mean, you get where I'm going here? I mean, this needs to be in as many places as it can where it will hit people in the heart, because passing a referendum, obviously, is just about votes. That's the point. Can you get enough votes? Well, to do that, this information Dave's going to put on video has to get to those people. And the reason I said what I did when we were talking about Simons, when I mentioned that pool is the emotional hot button that could save Simons. Because everywhere I go and talk about Simons, of all the things that might be on referendum, people comment to me most about the Simon Center. And the things they say to me are, one, well, geez, you know, they pay more to go down there or down there. We should stop subsidizing outright. But the loudest, and from every age group and from families, single people, whatever, we can't afford to lose our indoor pool. Two families have told me they moved here because we have an indoor pool. That is the emotional hot button. Okay, that's why I brought it up. So that message needs to get to those people so that they support the referendum. And same with fairs, same with veterans. The next one you want to name, that's why we need multiple videos that touch on different topics. And that's why we need to make sure that the people that care about any of these specific items know what this content is, where it is, so that they share it and comment on it. Because it's emotion that will carry the referendum if it passes, honestly.
Well, maybe what we need to do is just craft a directive when we have our next meeting and have some of the videos to county department heads that they post this on their social media pages. And that might kind of help deliver. I know several of the departments already did post the press release when we had that. I know Sheriff Porter did that, and I know several other department heads did. But I think we could get a little more strong with our language if we choose to at our next meeting. So let's save ourselves for that next meeting and think about how we can get as wide a reach as possible. We'll pass a motion out of the committee to that effect. The committee wants to do that.
MIS can also do it directly for each department. We have the ability to post to all pages if you desire that.
Well, that might be easier.
Wonderful.
Would be easier. And I'm going to, Carla Dowdner, are you still with us? Okay, if she's not,
She is online.
Okay, if she can hear me, I'm just either way. I'm going to use Carla as an easy example. Any of us could be the example. But in Carla's case, so think about how Facebook works. So people that are friends with her on Facebook, they obviously know she works at the fairgrounds, right? So when this gets posted, she needs to share it herself in her own personal feed from wherever it's posted, because Facebook will send that from her to her friends. Her friends already know she works at the fairgrounds. Therefore, it's logical, they're going to have an emotional interest in what goes on with the fairgrounds. They're her friends and family and so on. They're going to care more than the average Facebooker. Okay, so she needs to share that because of that. Specifically, it will go into that pod of people that will be connected to that to the fairgrounds. And each one of us, we may not even recognize which one of these topics will hit our friends in the heartstrings. But I'll bet every one of us, since we live here, we'll have them. We'll have a group of friends or family that'll react to whatever it is they do. That's why we all need to share it. So if it can get out on every one of these, that's all the better.
Okay, thanks for sharing your thoughts on that, Mayor Todd. I think that's some good good cheerleading that we're probably going to need to be doing for the referendum if that's the route we go down here. So we'll look forward to those video scripts coming back, Supervisor Turk, and thanks for taking the time to do this. Thanks for giving your time to the cause here. Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 11, levy referendums in Wisconsin at the past election. So there's an attachment in your folders. It's just got two news articles, one from Wisconsin Public Radio about voters supporting 85% of municipal public safety referendums in the November election. Looks like there were 20 of them and voters approved 17. So just want to make sure everyone saw this news if you hadn't heard it already. And then I just included, Supervisor Caro sent this article to me. This is more of a local example. The Village of Holman and the Town of Holland, they went together on a public safety referendum, and that one did pass. this article comes from late October, but it did pass. And that's an area with very high growth. They're able to raise their operating levy at a faster rate than we are, but their rate of growth is not as high as inflation. It's not as high as we might often think that suburban areas are. So any comments or questions on those two articles?
I have one.
Yeah, Mr. Severson.
I think the key word there and why those passed was one word: safety. I think that's why they passed. And I don't know how we can portray maybe some of our stuff as safety, but some of it's not. I don't know how well services are going to go over. Safety seems to pull on the heartstrings a little bit with everybody.
Kind of.
Yep, well said. I agree with what you're saying, and we're going to have to figure out what topics we want on the referendum or not. So public safety is definitely one of them. I know the Public Safety Committee did not want public safety on the referendum. So we'll need to deal with that.
I have one more comment, I guess. When we do talk with the public, is there some way how we can say how it's actually, I wouldn't say it's cheaper living here, but how it's less expensive to live in the rural America or rural southwestern Wisconsin versus being in the big metropolitan area and being in areas like east of here? Like, you know, why do we have absentee landowners that are coming here buying land? Is it because we just have the best hunting around here? Or is it because land values are cheaper and the taxes are cheaper, and so they're wanting to buy the land up? Like, why are people doing that? And so some people like to say, well, we don't want to, you raise my taxes and blah, 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 this and that. Well, if you think about it, if you live towards Milwaukee and Dane County, you're paying a lot more for your land than you are out here in the rural area. And I don't think people really understand that part of it. And then other people always talk about how counties, how I hear this quite a bit. Even one person told me, he says, you got to run the county and treat it like a business. And I don't agree with that, because we provide services. And if those services were to make a profit and be profitable, then business would be doing it, not counties. But they can't make a profit off of this stuff. But I don't know how we can kind of say that stuff. Our education.
I'm not sure either, but those, you know, I think those are good arguments, you know, and good perspective myself. So I agree with you. So I think as we do these videos and, you know, as we, you know, assuming we go forward with the referendum, you know, we know that the Counties Association has offered the help of a PR firm. So I think some of those discussions, some of the points you're bringing up and some of the points that these articles bring up, I think we could talk that over with a PR firm should we go down that route.
I think it should be discussed.
Anyone else? Oh, yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
I just said that it just needs to be discussed. I feel it needs to be discussed. Whether the committee does or not, I don't know.
I'm not hearing anyone objecting.
Device unlocked. 60,086,495,009.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on to agenda item number 12 then. This is definitely one where I think we need some action tonight if we're gonna take this to the next step. So if you go to your agenda item number 12 in your folders, it's called 12 County Board Survey. So I'm trying to figure out, you know, I'm just going to tell you my thoughts, and you all can, you know, tell me what your reaction to this is. But the resolution passed by the county board in July, it directed us to develop a referendum question or questions, including cost estimates, if we wanted to do that. So the chart that we have in our public information report that's updated now, that matches the 5-year financial plan, these are the dollar amounts that where we're asking different committees and departments to make cuts to their operating levy on our property tax. So it's 4.6 million right there, and this is by the year 2027. So Mr. Langreck brought an updated 5-year financial plan to the Finance and Personnel Committee that had these changes in here and then some other changes that have developed since he initially put it together back in August. You know, health insurance figures have come in. You know, there's other things that have changed, and he's keeping that up to date for the Finance and Personnel Committee, and we can access that as well. It's showing right now that there is $700,000 available to reduce the amounts below. So basically, in August, the 5-year financial plan was balanced. It was zeroed out through the year 2027. Now, because of changes that have been made, because we updated some of these figures in the financial plan, figures from this chart, and because of other changes that have gone on, we have $700,000 to use to reduce the amounts below. So I think the question is going to come up really quickly. How do we choose which of these gets a reduction in their cuts? Or I can't call them cuts because sometimes we're increasing revenues too, but they're reduction to the property tax levy. Which one of these can be reduced by 700 grand, or which multiple ones of these? So if you go under the chart here, I just wrote out these dollar amounts will already be decreased based on reductions that will not be placed on the referendum. So for example, I know the Sheriff's Department has come up with $60,000 in additional revenues they can bring in annually. So we know that dollar amount is, you know, that will change. We know the HHS department has offered several things that they can permanently cut. They don't want that to be placed on the referendum. Land and zoning, there's another example that I'm writing about right here, right under the chart. So to keep track of these items, I know that we're going to need the administration department to account for a detailed list of items, and then by the year also, 2023 to 2027. So I'm just trying to think ahead to next steps. You know, as that's all going around on in the background, we're coming up with these dollar figures that we're going to make cuts. We're coming up with dollar figures that we're going to place on the referendum. How are we going to decide what the size of the referendum is and what should go on the referendum? So I've got 3 questions here, and I'm thinking of these as being like framework questions. So if we adopt these tonight, we could develop a survey for the county board. Maybe you all want to change these questions. Maybe these aren't the right questions, but I'm just going to run through the questions that I'm thinking of right now. So the first one, what % increase in property taxes are county board members comfortable with? So we know we have $4.6 million in cuts to make, so we know that amount could be up to $4.6 million that we need to raise the levy to cover all these things. Although we know we're going to decrease that amount based on what I was just speaking of in the previous paragraph. The current property tax levy is $10.5 million a year. Through 2027, are county board members comfortable with an annual increase of, do they want it to stay flat? Are they comfortable with 2.5%, 5%, 7.5%, 10%, et cetera? So I just threw out here what some of those increases would look like and what the difference would be between now and 2027. So if we increased property taxes 10% every year, that would more than cover all of these reductions that are being required. We know that amount's going to go down though. So say county board members, say we surveyed them and we asked each person to give us a percent and it averaged out to 2.5%. That would give us $1 million to work with on a levy. So that's kind of my thinking behind that first question. Feel free to interrupt me, otherwise I'm just going to keep going. The second question I'm thinking of is what are the priorities of the county board for funding? So, for example, let's assume the county board's comfortable with a referendum question that annually increases the levy by 5%. Under the current scenario where we have 700 grand available for reducing cuts, an additional 2.3 million could be placed on the referendum if they're comfortable with a 5% increase annually. That results in $3 million, but we have $4.6 million in identified reductions. So if the county board prioritizes one department as the number one priority and it costs $700,000, we don't need to place that on the referendum. It's just automatically funded back. But the next set of priorities would be that 2.3 million. What would we place on the referendum? What's going to go on the referendum? What's going to be a permanent cut, or the lowest priorities? So we did a survey back in 2021. The county board, everyone took this survey. It was during the budget setting process. We ranked things in this first column over here, the average board ranking here, what the adjustment was, what the amount was, what the running total was, so we could figure out what could be funded and what could not be funded. So I'm thinking of something along those lines to answer that question. What are the priorities of the county board? And then the last thing I'm thinking about, the last question is the county board comfortable with raising taxes through additional short-term borrowing for capital projects and court-ordered placements? So if that's the case, if we know the county board's comfortable with that, we could reduce the amount of the referendum or potentially even totally eliminate it, depending on how much of what the dollar amounts for capital projects and court-ordered placements that could be pulled out of the operating levy and put onto the short-term borrowing levy. So I just wrote the example here. Let's say the county board is comfortable with a 5% annual levy increase. If they're comfortable with increasing the levy by 2.5% without a referendum through their own actions, that could be done through short-term borrowing, say for asphalt and for court-ordered placements, depending on the amount of those items. So those are the three questions. I'm curious to know your all's thoughts on this approach.
Mr. Chair, Steve here.
Yeah.
Your third idea there. I guess I need to be clear on when we say our percent increase of the tax levy, is that just the operational part or the total tax levy including debt service?
Well, I think it's the total debt levy including debt. I'm sorry, it's the total levy including debt service, because if the county board is comfortable making the increase themselves, there are ways to do it without going to referendum for all of the costs.
Right.
So
but I guess my concern is I wouldn't think there'd be that many things that you could switch over to the short-term borrowing. I mean, there's a lot more operational budget holes than there are capital costs, aren't there?
So that's why I'm meeting with the highway department on early next week to figure out what do they have in their budget that is capital, especially asphalt, because the answer we've heard as far as how they're going to make their reductions in their budget is to reduce asphalt in their operating levy. Now, they're not talking about switching it over necessarily to short-term borrowing, but they're basically saying right now that they can cut, somewhere in the range of 300 to 800 grand, depending on the year, from their operating levy to meet the budget reductions that the county board has directed them to look at. So that's quite a bit of money. I know the placements are about $1 million a year. Now,
well, that sounds like
we got that question out there.
Yeah, we need that information from HHS or somebody. If those truly can
That's
be,
right. I think,
yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
This is Commissioner Elder.
Just
to let you know, a lot of other counties do a lot of their asphalt projects per year underneath short-term borrowing, and it has been very successful for them. It's not an opposed route to be able to take the asphalt projects and move those over to short-term borrowing rather than portions of levy.
And we're already doing that, at least partially.
Right.
Mr. Chair, a question on our short-term borrowing. We've been doing this 1 million. Where do we start getting too much that we can't pay it off short term? What's our cap on that?
Well,
Mr. Chair, this is Administrator
Go ahead.
Langrick. I can take a swing at that one if you want. So there's
Sure.
no the money, Steve, that's going to be coming back from it. How we operate it right now is that we're going to borrow it at the end of this year, and then it's going to impact next year's property taxes. So the funds come back to us at the change of the year in January and such. And if it comes in later, it comes in later, and then we pay those notes off then in early part of the year in March. So the funds that we're borrowing out, we're essentially putting against the tax base and having those funds come in then in March to pay those off. The limit on what you can do that really comes then into the legalities of what you can kind of twofold on what you can claim as a capital or underneath the expenditures on court order placements or the insurances, those types of elements. So then the check and balance then is really on the appetite on how much more burden you want to put on your total levy, if I said that correctly, Mr. Chair.
Right, but then in the meantime, don't you have to pay off the short-term note from, I don't know, from your general fund until those taxes come back in?
No, the taxes come in January, Steve. We pay them off in March.
Okay, got it. All right.
It's mostly a political question. We of course have to stay under the Wisconsin constitutional requirement that our debt be less than 5% of our equalized value.
Sean?
Yeah, Mr. Brewer.
Here's a question for Administrator Langrick. When we first, 3 years ago, when we first did our short-term borrowing, do you remember the percentage increase on the county's share of property tax that generated?
I don't recall the percentage, but in very broad strokes, when we do about $1 million, it's just shy of approximately $100 on $100,000 of property value is, I think, the general stroke we look at with it.
The figure of 15% is rattling around in my noggin. And it seemed dramatic at the time. However, it's a recurring increase now. In other words, every year it's the same because we're borrowing about the same. If somebody wants to,
Sure, it was.
Go ahead.
It was 14% in the year that you're asking about, is what I recall. But the other thing to keep in mind is we did we took out the 5-year note that year, I believe it was, for $3 million worth of starting up a capital program. So the two things hit the same year. Yeah.
Well, that's the answer to the question, Steve's question.
And I think we can craft the increases how we think they are how they're best for the county and for the taxpayers. You know, we don't have to take another big $1 million jump necessarily with those. We could ramp those up on an annual basis.
Right.
They don't have to be so sudden. But I don't know if that takes care of this whole referendum question either. I don't think it does, because we don't know what we could pull off of operating and put toward capital. I don't think we have enough to do that either. So I think it's just a general question. I think that's why I had it laid out there like that, is the county board comfortable with raising taxes? Because you're right, if we just keep it at $1 million, we're just keeping taxes flat. But are we comfortable with raising taxes by adding to that short-term borrowing?
I like the blended approach, Sean.
Mr. Chair? Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Carroll, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, whether we do it through short-term borrowing or a referendum, the total, be it blended or one or the other, it still all adds to the tax levy. And so that final total tax levy percent is I guess the thing we got to figure out.
I think you're exactly right. I really agree with you. And do we take a blended approach? Do we just go for one or the other? I think that's kind of the question before us, and I think it's going to help our committee understand what to do if we better understand what the county board's comfort level is with some of these things.
Mr. Chair, I would agree with Mr. Caro. The bottom line is we're either going to have to cut spending or increase taxes. And so, okay, how far is too far? We don't know what the comfort level is, but whether it's via referendum or via shifting things to short-term borrowing, we are going to increase taxes if we don't do dramatic spending cuts.
And that's a good point. I like that you bring that up because we already are doing spending cuts through a lot of these changes that are coming out of committees. We're seeing that, you know, from different committees. They're coming up with ways to reduce their impact to the property tax levy. So we can't just think about it as operating referendum and short-term borrowing, because then you have your reductions that some departments are already going to be implementing if we move forward with all this. Any other thoughts on these questions? Supervisor Frank or Severson or Mayor Todd?
I've listened to the conversation, the blended, the bottom line is you're right. We got to raise the revenue. In my own mind, I kind of have a percentage that I think would work, but I think that's something that we need to pass on to personnel and finance and then make that decision from there. So it's.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Frank. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, if we move this on tonight, we still have to figure out. We still have to craft a survey or a decision tool for the board to study, right?
So what I was thinking here, so our next county board meeting is on Tuesday, December 13th. I think I've got that date right. In order to move forward with our referendum, the county board would need to move forward at their January meeting. So our last chance to survey the county board about this is in December. So if you go to the top of the cover sheet here for this agenda item, I was thinking a motion to approve a framework to guide the development of a county board survey to be considered at the next referendum committee meeting. So I was thinking that what we would do, I don't know that it needs to go to finance and personnel. I know you mentioned that, Supervisor Frank, but I was just thinking if we develop a survey, we pass it out of committee at our next meeting, and then we have that go to the county board for their December 13th meeting, then we could get the results of that, and that will help us craft the language of the question and the amount of the question.
I stand corrected. Yes, that's a much better plan.
And Supervisor Caro, does that answer your?
Yeah, in other words, at this point, we don't have to pick which of these three possible approaches is the one we're going to work on. We're going to figure that out at our next meeting, right?
Right. So I was thinking between now and the next meeting, we'll draft a survey, and then this committee will look at the survey at the next meeting based on these three questions, and then we'll issue that survey to the county board.
All right. I move that we approve this framework.
Okay, got a motion by Carol.
I'll second.
Okay, second by Frank. Any discussion on this further? Ms. Dole, if you could take a roll call vote, that'd be great.
Oh, let's see. What did I do last time? Here. Sean Murphy Lopez,
Aye.
Bob Frank,
Aye.
Dave Burke,
Aye.
Carrie Severson,
Aye.
Todd Copperell,
Aye.
Steve Carroll,
Aye.
6 voting aye, no nos, 0 nos, passes.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Doles. So we'll go ahead and move forward with developing a survey. If anyone wants to help with that, please let me know. Future agenda items, I'm sure we got our plates full, of course, already, but this is just an opening for anyone if you've got future agenda items that haven't been mentioned. Does anyone have any? Okay, let's move on to adjournment then. So let's look for a date and time that works for folks for our next meeting. I believe we need to have one within 2 weeks from today. So next Monday is November 29th and the following Monday is December 5th. Did either one of those dates not work for anyone?
I think you meant the
I'm sorry,
28th.
next Monday is the 28th.
Thank you.
And then the following one is December 5th. And actually, I think the 28th is too soon. So I'm wondering if December 5th works for folks.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I think we also, I'd prefer if we can do in person, so we should make sure that MIS it can handle that as well.
Okay, Ms. Scott, does December 5th work for MIS?
We might have.
Yes,
we might have.
the fifth should be fine, unless there's a conflict.
Do we have parks?
Yeah, Parks will be meeting and so as long as Parks can be done before you guys start, that's fine.
Regarding the game that I found inside of Anna's room, I actually seen a whole bunch of little yellow services. Pretty sure I can stuff that came right into. Oh, I put it somewhere. Oh, damn it.
Oh, mute your mic.
Folks of the committee, we have parks starts at 5:30.
Welcome to WebEx.
Is what I'm
Enter your
tracking.
access code or meeting.
So depending on how late you'd want to start.
Enter your attendee ID number followed by pound.
Yeah, I put in everything, Diana, but I can't help but feel like there are still pieces of truth that need to be uncovered.
I apologize. I would mute him if I could, but I'm driving on the interstate.
Yep, and I'm sorry I dropped again, but I'm assuming that Sunday or that Monday rather does not work. Is that what I was hearing before?
The 5th, December 5th?
Yes, this Monday, December 5th. Is there a conflict with the Fair Recycling and Parks Committee that night?
Things I just covered
We
before.
meet at 5:30 and we would start at 6:30 unless we wanted to start a little later.
I think that's
Okay.
city parks.
No,
That's not county parks.
Mr. Severson, how long are your meetings going? What do you think about that?
That's not city park. I think that's not county parks. I think that's city parks.
Okay.
That's
So
the city park that meets that night. Because, well, we used to meet
Okay.
that Monday, but with this new reorganization and we had to change it to the last Monday of the month.
Okay.
Last Wednesday.
So does Monday, December 5th at 6:30 p.m. not work for anyone?
I just have a fire commitment that night, but
What time is that?
It starts around 6 o'clock and.
Plays and it said that it's not too good right now.
But
If we started at 7 o'clock, would that work for you?
No, because it goes until 10, 11 o'clock. It's my
Okay.
Monday training night that night. I can make the meeting.
Okay.
Monday works.
All right. Well, okay. I'm looking for a motion then to adjourn to Monday, December 5th at 6:30 p.m. in the county boardroom.
This is Bob, so moved.
Dave will second.
Okay, motion by Frank, second by Turk. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Until next time.